All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Successful Coach podcast. I'm Michael Pacheco, your host. Here with me today is Dave Roby. Dave, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Awesome.
Glad to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So Dave here has been consulting to high-performance teams for more than 3 decades. He bought and grew a company to Inc. magazine's number 68 on their fastest-growing companies list. And he believes that if you hire the right people, the rest will take care of itself. Dave, can you just, I guess we'll start out with just telling us a little bit about that. What does that mean? How does hiring the right people mean that the rest will take care of itself?
Well, maybe it's a sports analogy, Michael. I come from an athletic background as well. And on winning teams, you have the right people in the right slots where their talent is best. And so that's what I work on. I apply that to businesses. So if first of all, we hire and screen the right people, put them in a position of success where their skill set is and where their personality fits. And you can create a high performance team by doing that.
I love it. It recalls to mind the Jim Collins quote of getting the right seats on the right bus, something along those lines. Right people on the right bus.
Yeah, right seats on the bus. And it does work, even though it's a Jim Collins book. It works in athletics, and it works just as well in business. When they draft people, they put them in a position of success. And that's really the key, getting people into a position of success, not just because, well, they could be a family member and you put them in a position that they're not right for, it won't work. And they will fail and the company will fail.
So in your intro, you mentioned, I mentioned, so you were telling me about the company that you grew to that the Inc. Magazine's 500 top fastest growing companies list. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's a big accomplishment.
It was a real fun thing. Is we found an opportunity of a company that wasn't doing well, and we actually had to hire the craftsmen, hire new craftsmen because we moved the company across state lines. So we started out with 23 people. And great team, very cohesive team. And we wanted to have it be a high performance team and very flat organization. So basically what we had was team members and team leaders. There wasn't a big hierarchy. Well, that grew from those 23 people to over 150. And we kept that same mantra, if you will, where team members and team leaders worked across different departments, and we were selling to very high-end retail companies, and so you had to have excellent craftsmanship. It was wood fixtures is what the business was. So we were fortunate. We had the right people in the right seats, and the revenue grew and the profits grew accordingly.
You say you're fortunate. Were you fortunate, or was that part of the work that went into it? Was that part of your plan?
Well, it was part of the plan, but you've got to execute.
Sure.
If you can have a great team, but if you don't execute, you don't sell, you don't collect, you don't do great craftsmanship, you don't service your customer, you don't have accountability. And we had people that frankly couldn't fit into that culture. So the downside is not everybody fits into that. Not everybody can buy into that, but those that do, it's really rewarding. It's extremely rewarding. As the leader, it was rewarding, and I think for the people, it was rewarding. And we tried to do things that were unconventional. We had about 2 pages of HR, as opposed to a big manual, and our rules were real simple. And these are my personal rules. Don't lie to me, don't steal from me, and don't mess with my family. Those were the basic rules. And of course, you have the legal parts of HR that you have to have. But everybody knew those rules. And sadly, there were 1 or 2 that failed in that, and consequences were immediate. But the rest of the team bought into it. And it was, as a leader, again, it was greatly rewarding.
I love that. I think For me, I run Boxer Media and Growth Marketing, and we've got, I think everyone thinks we've got a fantastic company culture as well. And it seems like one of the side effects of having a really great company culture is exclusivity, right? It's not for everyone.
It isn't for everyone, but I'll tell you what, we wanted to have a company. This was a small community of 20,000 people. We wanted to have a company where people wanted to come, were knocking on the door to work there. We
Yeah.
wanted to have that kind of a culture.
Nice.
We didn't have to advertise for people.
Yeah.
We just put the word out on the shop floor, and we said, we need to hire 5 more people in this department, and people came and applied. Mm-hmm. So it did work. There were some peaks and some valleys, but again, it was greatly rewarding, and we were honored to be number 68 in the Inc. magazine, fastest growing 500 companies.
That's amazing. And so was that kind of a launch into coaching and consulting?
Well, I went from that to, when you sell a company, you say, well, what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So I decided to buy and sell laptops on eBay. And this was quite a while ago, but Coca-Cola would get rid of 50 IBM ThinkPads as an example.
Sure.
And I would take them, I would refurb them, I would relicense the Windows. I think it was like Windows 3.0 or something like that. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was all. That's how old I am. Anyway, I would refurb them and sell them on eBay all over the world. Great fun. Then I had people coming and say, well, I need a business plan, or I need to raise some capital for my business. So that I just kind of evolved into that, helping businesses with economic development, with business growth ideas. And then about 5 years ago, I was approached that somebody looked at my LinkedIn profile and said, how would you like to coach in England? And I thought, well, this sounds like fun. And so you went through a 3-day vetting process, actually, including flying to England and doing an audition. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity came to get into coaching businesses. Mm-hmm. At their place. And so I took it, and 2 weeks a month, I traveled before COVID. I traveled to England to coach businesses, 1 business per day.
Okay. That's a healthy travel schedule.
It was great. If you ever have a chance to go, if you ever have a chance to go to England and travel in England, and the people and the culture are amazing. Really a lot of fun. Yeah.
Before I was doing marketing, I was a computer virus researcher, and I worked for McAfee Antivirus. Okay. And I used to go, we had an office. This is in the early mid 2000s. We had an office in Aylesbury, which if memory serves, I think is a little like an hour or so northwest of London. Yep. I had a chance to go over there usually once or twice a year. And it's great. I got to see Depeche Mode live in Manchester while I was there once. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Manchester.
Yeah. It was a good time.
So taking that same approach to team building, hiring the right people, putting them in the right position. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's difficult because most of the businesses I coached in England are family businesses. Mm-hmm. And so it's sons and daughters, and they come into the business because it is a family business. And one of their cultural items is we want people in our families to work with us, which is great.
Yeah.
But sometimes they put people in the wrong position. Mm-hmm. So as a coach, I come in and I assess that. They put them in a position, frankly, to fail. Mm-hmm. And so if they are willing, we actually move them around. We move them to a position that they're better suited for.
Mm-hmm. And how do you come to the conclusion that person X fits in position Y? Do you have
great question
methods for that?
Some people use what's called a predictive index. I happen to use a tool called the DISC profile.
Okay, sure.
And Tony Robbins has actually a free one on his site, which is pretty good. But I do a DISC profile, and you take as an example, DISC stands for dominant, influencing, steady, and compliant. Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the science and the psychology behind that, a compliant person or a steady person great in accounting, great in detail work, never have to worry about accuracy. But if you have that person in a position of, okay, I need you to go out and start a new territory in Northwest London, they will likely fail. And this, I think this first came out in like 1947 or 43 or something like that. So it's been honed, and there are different versions of it. So first thing I do is I assess the entire team. What is your DISC profile? And then I sit down and I interview them. And you can tell that it really matches up once you've done it for a while. It really matches up. You know, this is an S. And 69% of the people in the world are S's. Very steady.
Yeah.
Now, can they succeed? Could that high S or high C succeed in being a hunter? Perhaps. But why not put them in a position where their skill set and their attitude and their psychology fits?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't, they don't know how to do that. And that's where I come in, is helping them assess that. And then when they see it, it's kind of an aha moment. They say, oh yeah, that's why that person isn't doing so well in that department. We put them in the wrong slot. It's not that, keep in mind, it's not that that person's a bad person.
Sure.
It's just, they are who they are, and they are the way they are.
Sure.
Now, some people, I call it making a horse a cow. Some people try to make a horse a cow, and I say, well, you can try it, but the likelihood, why not put them in a position of success rather than going against the grain?
It's the old, I think it's an Einstein quote. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it's a failure.
Great one. That's a great one. Yeah. Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah. So I imagine when you go into an organization and you make that connection, I can imagine in my head that the manager may look at that and see that connection after you figured it all out and think, of course, now it makes sense. Kind of one of those things where it's like, it's very complicated underneath, but on the face of it, when you take the complication and simplify and connect the dots basically, right? Yeah. Then it's kind of one of the, oh, of course, that's how it's supposed to be moments.
It's probably something that they've thought about. They've seen it. It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like artwork. You put a nice piece of artwork on the wall, and if you walk by it every day, you stop noticing it. And with when they have an aha moment and they say, well, if I've coached a company for, let's say, a year, I can go in and they say, well, this person's a C or this person's an S. They know it without even having done the DISC profile. Or when they go to hire, they'll use the profile for the job that fits and hire against that.
And how can so you use a DISC profile to kind of map out the person. How do you map out the job and make that match, make that connection?
Well, actually, we have the job description already.
Okay.
We know that that position will best be successful, let's say, with, let's take an example. We had a customer service person. So a customer service person is answering a lot of questions. There's a lot of detail work in that, and they have to be accurate. So the role of that person, but yet they still need to understand sales, because they're dealing with customers and they have to understand how customers think. So the right profile in our assessment, or at least in my assessment, is that's a high S, steady, because they're going to deal with a lot of customers, and perhaps some I, which is influencing. That's the salesperson.
Okay.
So if they're a strong S, secondary I, that's great. Now, we had a case where a person was a very, very high I and secondary S. So we moved her into sales and replaced her with an SI. If you can see where that's going.
Yep. So it sounds like for the job end of things, you're using, a little bit of maybe a combination of all your experience plus even just a little bit of kind of common sense to think about, like, what, between DISC, which one of those, dominant profiles is going to fit into a given position based on day-to-day tasks, based on the overarching theme of that position, that sort of thing.
And also keeping in mind that most people are primary S.
Right.
So, if in a warehouse person, as an example, it's hard work. It's got to be steady. They've got to be steady. They got to show up on time. Sure. They've got to have some accuracy. So that's probably an SC. An accountant, as an example, needs to have a strong C, accurate, accurate information, but they can be dominating too. The best CFO that we hired was profiled as a DC, very dominant and very accurate. And the interesting part was this: this company had never had a CFO. Somebody got the short straw and became the accountant.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it was in trouble.
Yeah.
So they never hired a CFO. So I said to them, this is what we need to do. We need to have a strong CFO to come in here and take control. And they went and interviewed, and they hired someone that was actually from De Beers, the diamond company. Yeah. And this person was a DC. And the managing director asked me, well, we've never had a CFO. What do I do? How do we treat him? I said, if you want to buy a sandwich, you better ask her for permission to buy a sandwich. And the long.
Uh-oh, Dave, I think we lost your audio here.
Are we there?
There we go. There, it's back.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
Long story short, she got everything systematized, accurate, and they did well and are continuing to do well. They're a former customer or client.
That's great. That must have been a harsh come to Jesus moment for the rest of the crew. Anybody who wants to expense anything.
That's well, and the trouble was it was very, very lax. As an example, this company provided vehicles for people, and if your tires went bad, they replaced them. Well, okay, that makes sense. However, this is England, so there's curbs that you hit all the time. So many times if a car might be 6,000 miles and they needed new tires.
Oh wow, yeah.
He implemented a policy that said, these tires have to get this many miles. If it's under that, you pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just some tighter controls.
Yeah.
And that's what that company needed. Another company, we hired a strong SC and for accounting as well. And that's because we wanted timely and accurate information. We didn't need the dominance because the dominance already existed. So that's how I use this, is putting people in the right seats where they can succeed.
Nice. I like it. So who are your clients today? What kind of clients do you work with? What's your ideal customer?
2 to 10 million, with Gus up to 30 million, perhaps. Family business primarily.
I like that.
I come from a family business. Prior to the manufacturing company, I spent 16 years in a family business. Actually was attempting, I suppose this was a little bit of an ego thing, was attempting to grow that to be an Inc. 500 company. Didn't quite make it, but we grew rather rapidly. And then I said to myself, I need to do something on my own. I need to get out and do something on my own. So I started the consulting company, which then branched into buying the manufacturer. So I like family dynamics. I like the values that it brings.
Yeah.
There are problems with it, no question about it. But I understand those. So a typical is a family business, 2 to 10 million, maybe 20 million, that wants to grow the top line, but also the bottom line.
Hmm. Nice. Tell us about a big win in your. I mean, we obviously know about the Inc. 500 one for the company that you bought, but for your coaching and consulting, tell us about a big win that you've had.
Well, I've had several, a couple that come to mind. One of them is I walked into a company that said they were making X amount net profit year in and year out,
Hmm.
and they've been in business for 80 years.
Hmm.
First and second, or second and third generation are still working in the business.
Hmm.
So we put together a plan, and we put using also disc profiles to get the right people. We took that bottom line, which they were satisfied with, frankly, but the third generation wanted to make more money.
Hmm.
So we put together a budget and a plan and an aggressive sales strategy, and we grew that in 1 year four times that net profit. And these guys were excited about it, so they hired me for the next year. And I think it was like a 30% increase on that net profit the next year. I talked to them recently, and they're even doing better than that. So even after coaching, it continues.
Yeah.
If they continue to apply the principles. Another company I worked with, they were doing 8-9 million. Had some good people, had some people that were in the wrong seats.
Uh-huh.
We made those adjustments. They were comfortable. If that makes sense, they were
Sure.
moderately satisfied.
Yeah.
Except the CEO was not moderately satisfied. The rest of everybody was kind of comfortable.
Uh-huh.
So frankly, we made them uncomfortable.
Hmm.
We said, let's go after some business here. Let's go after this segment. They grew the business by 50%,
Hmm.
to 15 million in 1 year. We had to hire people. We had to get aggressive in marketing. We had to take care of customers. Every element of business we had to enhance to do that. So that was fun. And it also trailed down to the bottom line. I mean, their bottom line went like 10 or 15x. So that was fun. That was a nice win. Not every company will adopt, or if that's the right word, adopt coaching.
Yeah.
They might think it's a good idea. They've read about it somewhere. It's not for everybody.
Hmm.
Because when I come in, it's a disciplined approach.
Hmm.
It's not a canned approach, mind you. It's a disciplined approach where I hold people accountable. If you say you're going to do something, by golly, you better do it.
That's interesting. So you mentioned that in the last company that you were talking about, that you also pushed to like enter into some new markets and stuff. So it sounds like you do a lot more. Your focus may be on getting the right people in the right seats, but you do a lot more than that as well.
Well, absolutely. That's just the start. Getting the right people in the right seats. It's ongoing. It's a cultural thing after that. But then you look at where are the opportunities?
Yeah.
One company was, and they're just looking at this now. One company was selling, renting plants in downtown London. Let's say they'd go in and they'd maintain them. They'd rent those plants.
Lobby plants, kind of a thing.
Lobby plants, yes. Good business model.
Yeah.
But there's also another market of people that buy plants for home and buy trees for home. And they have the supply chain where they can get that.
Sure.
So right now what they're creating, they've just created their website. They've got their packaging. They've got their vendors that they can do that with, and they're going to launch into that business. Just taking that one as an example, here's another one that was kind of fun. They had this plant rental business, and then at Christmas time, they would sell a ton of Christmas trees. I mean, absolutely a ton. And I'm talking about 60 footers and 10 footers, 12 footers. But wow. It was really, really kind of fun. They had one family member that wasn't working there, a son. So I suggested, why don't we create an ancillary business of doing landscape care? Because you've got people that are maintaining now. So they started a landscape care business for this son, and they blew the cork off of it in sales. Just tremendous.
That's great. So you're basically just looking at like room, opportunities for a lateral extension or expansion,
Absolutely.
I guess.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
If there are things laterally, the company you mentioned, they went into manufacturing and filling of products. They were just selling the products, selling the packaging, but they are now contracting with customers to sell them the packaging plus filling the bottles for them.
Uh-huh.
So it's actually kind of a natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take credit for the idea. I can take credit for the push.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, it brings to my mind the idea of Amazon Web Services, which, Amazon, of course, they already have all of these servers and server farms, and they've got all these resources. And then someone, decided, hey, let's rent out this server space to web developers and things like that. And it's an entirely, it's a natural extension of resources they already had, which now makes them millions and millions and millions every year.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great example. And there, you look for those pockets of opportunity. The other one that's kind of, again, going back to athletics.
Mm-hmm.
In athletics, it's about winning.
Sure.
And it's winning with integrity, of course, but it's still about winning, right? So in a couple of companies we've done this. We had a weak competitor,
mm-hmm.
So we said, okay, let's have a war on that competitor. Let's have a campaign where we target that competitor. Where are they weak? Why are they weak? What
mm-hmm.
can we do? What's our offering?
Mm-hmm.
So we put our marketing plan together for that. We had a big theme inside. We had a target in the break room. We involved the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, it was great fun. And then internally, one of the themes we have is a war on mediocrity.
I love it.
And they have posters around that they make.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sell collateral of any kind, but they make war on mediocrity, and they focus on that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, that seems like a cool company culture move.
It is great fun. Great fun.
That team camaraderie kind of thing. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
I dig it. Cool. So can you tell me a little bit about? As we talked about a win, let's talk about a failure, or maybe if you'd rather frame it as a learning point in your
Sure.
coaching career.
I was coaching a company that about doing about 10 million, and there were two different businesses, two brothers, two different businesses. So I was coaching both, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
One was a wholesaler, and one was a project management contracting company. Mm-hmm. We developed a long-term plan, an aggressive plan for both. Some of it they listened to, some of them they didn't. Personality-wise, we didn't fit with mm-hmm. my personality and the CEO of the other one. So we agreed mid-contract that this wasn't a fit. It's not working well. Let's go separate ways. And that, that's what makes the world go round. That's going to happen.
Yep.
I had another company that had two divisions, and one of them was a distributorship for a product that the contract for the distributorship was coming up. Mm-hmm. So they had two choices. They could go to the distributor and say, hey, do you want to buy us in our book of business? Or and the distributor had the leverage, mm-hmm. or, we'll just compete with you. Mm-hmm. So the distributor didn't want to pay the price that they wanted, so they were going to compete. So they started to check the supply chain and long story short, that whole part blew up. And so the two businesses now today are one. And I don't know if anybody could have stopped that because of the circumstances of the leverage was all with the vendor or with the distributor. Mm-hmm. But was that a failure? Probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would have done differently, frankly. But it's a good learning experience that they had. When I came into the business, they already had this contract. I couldn't change the contract, and all we did was we grew the business. We grew the business by 26% in that business in 1 year, mm-hmm. and took it from a loss to a profit. Mm-hmm. Well, sadly though, that ended because the contract ended. So we kind of walked away from each other and said, I wish you well.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you now have, I mean, have you implemented a new way of maybe vetting your prospects before you start working with someone that will help you avoid situations like that in the future?
You know, because I've done disc for so long, I've probably used disc for 25 years.
Mhm.
I'm a high D secondary I. And my personality is not the easiest to deal with because I'm very dominant, but I'm also a sales guy, if you will.
Sure.
So with that, though, I can assess people to see if we can, if we can work together, if we can gel. In an interview, we do have an interview beforehand.
Yep.
If I go into a client, let's go back to pre-COVID when you could travel. The typical deal would be a 2-day deep dive into the business. I have walked into a business and did a 1-day deep dive, and I said, I can't help you. And
do you charge for that?
I did charge for 1 day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we had a contract actually for a year, but I went in for 1 day. It was supposed to be 2 days. I went in. Well, let me just tell you what happened here. I walked in for 1 day, worked through all the different departments, and I said, I can't help you. But they had a board of advisors. And so I asked the board of advisors to come in and make the changes that I recommended, but I couldn't help them. Frankly, I didn't like the business much either. I didn't like the business model.
Yeah.
But I asked the board to come in. So they now have the board semi more operational, helping the owners do what they need to do. So, you know, I wouldn't call that a failure, but I would say that I can tell pretty well if I can work with some, and there are some that would be borderline, I suppose. I mean, that's just the nature of being human, right?
Yeah. It is. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And you kind of, I mean, when you really speak to anyone face to face, especially if you're in the same room, it's a bit easier, I think, to get a sense of whether or not you're going to gel with that person.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
you can tell. I mean, it's if you're selling and you don't think you can work with this customer, you can tell. If you're consulting, it's just being human. You know, it's just relating to people. If you can see some light bulbs go on and some ideas, I look around the place, and this actually happened. At the end of the day, I said, you know, this place is a pig pen. Why don't you clean it up? And they did.
So you're direct.
I'm a little direct. Yeah, I would say that. I would say if you talk to clients of mine, they would say that that's one of the things that I am, is very direct. But I'm not, you know, not in a mean way. I mean, it was, they knew it was a pig pen. They just, it's like I said, it's like art. They walk by it, they don't see it anymore.
Yeah. Interesting. But you don't, so in this scenario that we've been talking about, we're talking about, you know, how you would gel with one person, maybe the project director or something like that, or whoever is kind of directing the client side. But you also do work with teams as well. Is that right?
I work with everybody. I work with individuals. Yeah. As an example, let's say we have a sales guy that is struggling. I'll work with the sales guy. Let's say we have a warehouse guy that doesn't know how to manage the people in the warehouse. I'll work with that manager to do that. So it's not a boardroom type of coaching.
Yeah,
that's only one element of it. It's full team coaching. So I might have a meeting with the customer service department and talk about problems and solutions, where we're trying to go as a company. I'm not the acting CEO, but I kind of act like a CEO, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. What does that look like right now in COVID times, right? Because presumably you're not flying anywhere. Maybe
no, I can't fly. So everything now is virtual. Yeah. So we will have Zoom meetings. We might have an hour Zoom meeting every other week.
With how many people?
I'm sorry?
With how many people?
Oh, we could have 4 to 10 at any one time. And we've had them, I've had them where we'll have a departmental meeting and then the next department comes on and then the next department comes on. So we'll have an agenda, talk about the things in each department, and then come back and summarize with the owners.
Okay, interesting. And do you utilize like breakout rooms or that kind of thing?
No, don't do that. No, it's all just the main Zoom room.
Yeah.
But it could be an individual that needs coaching. It could be the team. We want to make sure that they're making the progress towards the plan, if you will. And if there's another product, and this just happened actually, if there's another product that can help them now, and coaching needs to be paused while they implement that, I've recommended they do that. Yeah. And that was a case where, I don't know if you're familiar with EOS.
I am. I've got traction.
Yeah.
Over there.
Okay. All right. Well, I read traction. I knew that EOS would fit this company. I'm not an EOS implementer, and I don't want to be. So I recommended that they implement EOS. So they found an implementer. I didn't interview them, but I have talked to them several times, the implementer. So right now they're going to continue coaching, but as they're implementing level 10 meetings and different things, they're using this other person to do it.
Yep.
So if I'm not the best person to implement something that I think is right for the company, I've got resources all over the world to bring in that can do that.
I like that. That's an integrity move. Okay, so Dave, you've talked a little bit about client when you've spoken about clients. London and England, the UK was brought up quite a bit. Do you work with clients around the globe, though? Is that right?
Mostly they've been, for the last 4 years, they've been Scotland, England, and North America.
Okay.
So Canada, United States. But I've been so busy in England, there's only, if you think about it, you're coaching 10 different businesses.
Yep.
Or 11 different businesses. So you have to think like each business. And that's plenty for me.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to be respectful of your time, but maybe if you could answer one more question before we go. What kind of tips or advice would you give to a newer coach, to someone who, maybe wants to get into the business, or maybe they've been in the business for, a year or two and they're still trying to feel out where they fit in, how they fit in?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. One of them, be willing to walk away. You can't beat that horse long enough. If it's not working, it's not working. Always act from integrity.
Always. Yeah.
And I know that I'm not giving lip service to that. I mean, that's how I live. Is if you have integrity, it'll sell itself, and it will show it. It'll show itself. Be real, be direct, and make sure that you're able to hold people accountable. And there are tools for that. We use Smart Sheets as an example. Traction and EOS is. So if we have something that's supposed to be done by a certain time, they need to be able to track it. So you need to, there's a lot of people that are getting into coaching, but I say you have to understand, you don't need to understand necessarily the mechanics of the business. You need to understand people. That's it.
That's a great delineation. I like that a lot. And I think you're spot on. Yeah.
Good.
In terms of tracking, would you recommend something just like a project management tool for something like that, like a task management tool?
Well, Smart Sheets can be that. So as an example, and people laugh at me, they really laugh at me with this one. I went into a company, and when I left after 2 days, there were 63 to-dos by the next month. So we put that on a Smart Sheet, and we keep track of it. It's a project management software. It's not Microsoft Project, but it keeps track of who, by when, and that's the other key element that I want to stress, is that I call management theory management by when. And
Mhm.
and what I mean by that is this: you and I are sitting here talking, and you say, "Yeah, I'll get that done." And what'll happen is I might say, "Great, thank you." Well, I might think you're going to get it done in an hour.
Right.
You might think you get it done by the end of the week, and you're doing good.
Yeah.
So management by when is, I would ask you, okay, great, by when? And then we agree on when it should be done.
Yeah. I love that. I implement that in my company all the time. And anytime in any company, and anytime in any meeting, especially in our L10s, where we talk about actionables, when can that be done? When can I expect that to be, on my desk? It's an important one. Otherwise, stuff will get lost in the shuffle. And like you said, the big problem that I found is that miscommunication, where person A is walking away thinking, okay, that'll be done by EOB tomorrow. And person B, who's doing it, is like, I'll get to that later this month.
Absolutely. That happens all the time. The other element that maybe I'll close with is this: people talk about KPIs.
Yep.
Key performance indicators. There are also KPAs, key performance actions.
Okay.
I believe that KPIs are kind of targets. As an example, KPAs lead to the KPIs. Now, here's my belief, and this is where my high D comes in. If we agree on a KPA, that you're going to make 20 phone calls, meaningful customer interactions per day as a telemarketer. If we agree on that, I should be able to take that to the bank because you said you could do it. I agreed that that's what we needed to get to the KPI. So I hold them really strongly accountable for KPIs. Yeah. And it helps create a high performance team.
I love that. I've never heard of KPAs before. I'm going to take that to the bank and start using that as well.
Good.
That's great, Dave. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. I wanted to let everyone know who's listening or watching. Dave, you had also had a very generous offer to chat with people.
Absolutely.
With a strategy call. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. If they want to talk and they have a problem, or they think, what is coaching all about, or can coaching help me? I have a website, daveroby.com. They can go on there. They can see what some success stories. They can see some resources, and they can also book a free consult, 30-minute consult right from my website. So I'd be happy to do that.
Beauty. And where else, besides your website, is there anywhere else where people might be able to connect with you, or is the website the best spot?
They can go to LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn probably since it started. And I've got, my experience, some success stories, some resources on there. Again, just search for Dave Roby. I'm in Kansas, in the U.S.
Perfect. All right, Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks for having me. That's great.
Right. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.